Welcome to World Financial Symposium's Market Spotlight Series, today focused on smart city technology and M&A. I'm Amy Goss, Marketing Coordinator for the WFS, an international organization dedicated to educating technology leaders. We run a series to provide a forum on timely topics in the software and technology industries. Today's sessions represent a 60-40 mix of smart city tellers and some of the largest smart city IT buyers in this fast-growing market. WFS events are held online and live throughout the year, and our next live event is scheduled for June in London. You can find more about upcoming events at www.wfs.com. I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Jeff Brown, Vice President of the Quorum Group, the leading mid-market M&A firm focused solely on software and IT. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you. I'm here from Quorum's research analyst, Tyler Vickers, bringing us an update on the latest M&A transactions in the sector. Then fortunate to have a great panel for you representing years of experience, analysis, and success in the technology marketplace. I'll look forward to introducing them to you shortly. But first, let's take a broad view of the sector. The industry is a relatively new market designation, yet it's undergoing significant growth and showing no signs of slowing down. So we're smart cities. They're connected, sustainable, low-carbon cities striving to be more competitive, livable, and to attract more investment than their traditional, older urban counterparts. The vision for a transition, livable, sustainable city remains practical and relevant in a world concerned with continuing population growth, demographic imbalance, natural resources, and the threat of dramatic climate change. A smart city that encompasses aspects of intelligent transport, security, energy management, CO2 emissions, and sustainability is a compelling goal for city managers and authority around the world. According to McKinsey, cities are key to where we are successfully meet this massive transition challenge and achieve the growth that is both sustainable and inclusive. And the critical pillar is going to be technology. What was a visionary notion is now the new normal. This is a large technology footprint spanning mobility, transport, buildings, infrastructure, energy, water management, security, even healthcare and governance. It's built upon critical enabling technologies subject to disruptive trends, providing opportunity for innovation and value creation. Normal enables a global technology market expected to cross the $1 trillion mark by 2010 and reach $1.5 trillion by 2020. Technology will be a big part of that growth. Emerging patterns in the capabilities of the major infrastructure players like AB, Cisco, GE, IBM, and Siemens, innovative business software players like Microsoft and Oracle, supporting newcomers to this market like Google, and fast-moving emerging players just now gaining traction like Smart Spam Insight and Phase Energy. Mesh are leading the way as so much of the early activity has been in the infrastructure and industrial automation areas. At this point, Schneider, along with ABB, Alstom, GE, and Siemens, are the operational technology, or OT, mega vendors. Global companies provide the automation and technology that makes the infrastructure industry run. The trend here is the integration of information technology and operations technology into integrated capability to address the complex infrastructure management challenges. GE, with its industrial internet, ABB, Siemens, and Schneider, have been transforming themselves from industrial conglomerates and are expanding their software and IT capabilities through acquisition. This is at a time when asset-intensive companies are revisiting their strategies for managing the IT-OT convergence, moving on process control, asset utilization, and waste reduction to earn the financial contribution of assets through better insight and control of those assets. Operation technology vendor Schneider Electric took a big step in this direction, closed acquisition of Invensys, the British industrial vendor, in a cash and stock deal worth $5.2 billion. And in a move, Accenture and Siemens announced the Omnetric Group, a joint venture to work with energy providers in the smart grid area to improve efficiency, grid operations, and reliability. The two vendors combine complementary core technologies, capabilities, Accenture on the IT side and Siemens on the OT side, to deliver solutions in the products and services spectrum. And important within this market is energy management. applications empower and motivate power producers and consumers to derive more value from their energy. In spite of the growth of the Internet of Things, the deployment of smart grid, the success of clean tech device plays like Nest and Honeywell, many investors remain more comfortable with software plays that better resemble the traditional VC model. Profile hardware ventures like Splindra have shifted investor confidence to software-based clean tech. Initial investments in clean tech hardware like smart grid and smart meters were focused on the infrastructure, and they outpaced the enabling software like big data analytics. These initiatives struggled to deliver real benefit for the power consumer who was footing the bill. But now we're seeing the next phase of digital energy solutions where energy management software and technology-driven conservation push to the front of the queue. With the flux of young, innovative technology companies, the VC funding remains very active, with multiple companies completing rather large Series B and Series C rounds. A few examples concentrated in the energy management arena. Nest closed its Series C, and then shortly thereafter, in January of 2014, reached a $0.2 billion buyout with Google. Our company, Quorum Group, led the sale of two smart city-related client companies. In the first, Quorum rented global technology consultancy CityTech in sale to ICF International. ICF provides expertise in energy, environment, and infrastructure, health, social programs, public safety, and defense markets. And then led the sale, the recapitalization of Arcos of Columbus, Ohio, by the global private equity firm Riverside Company. Arcos provides a suite of SaaS products that automatically calls and assembles utility crews to restore power, handle emergent work in power plants, and fix gas and water leaks. This customer list includes 21 of the top 25 utilities in the U.S. Take a look at recent M&A activity in the sector and a sense for the multiple and the volume of deals. I'd like to webcast over to my colleague, Tyler Vickers.
Thanks, Jeff. So the smart cities movement is driven by a number of trends, including three that fall into the top 10 trends that Core identified for 2014. These are an analysis of the current key trends we see driving deals globally, drawing daily conversations with over 3,000 buyers, input from sellers, and extensive research. More and more cities are finding ways to incorporate internet-connected sensors to every aspect of the environment that aligns perfectly with the smart city. Organizations and services that derive their efficiency through centralization, like utilities and governments, are now driven by distributed systems that can collect, monitor, and analyze data broadly, and being met effectively by the Internet of Things and enmeshed systems, as well as mobilization of companies and governments. Within core primary market sectors, we find smart cities M&A activity occurring mostly in two. First, the vertical market, where companies in the government, energy, and environment, or architecture, engineering, and construction sector look to wrap their offerings with energy management analytics or sensor technology. In the horizontal market, companies incorporate supply chain management and other software to generate and maintain organizational efficiency. Now let's look at recent deals and how these firms realize value through their smart cities technology. Of smart city technology is the analytics needed to make smart decisions, and big companies in the space have seen notable interest. Harris provides energy, water, and waste usage analytics to a wide range of businesses. And they are acquired by Marlin Equity-backed Verisay, which provides related SaaS solutions for companies in grocery, specialty retail, and food service industries. This was Verisay's second deal since being acquired by Marlin in January 2013. Verdee provides a similar analytics SaaS, but focused on aggregation to enable gas, electric, and water utilities to deploy smart grid technology. They're offering grid as a service. Smart Meter Census acquired the 2-year-old startup for $5 million last month, and such of software platforms by related hardware companies should continue in this space. Well, acquisitions in a row, 3 of these in as many months, Enernoc is positioning itself as a global powerhouse for energy management solutions. The most recent acquisition builds on deals made earlier in the year as they pick up Entech USB, a utility invoice billing and energy management software provider for nearly $10 million. In their international growth, Enernoc picked up Activation Energy for $4 million and Telios AG for $15 million earlier in the year. A private equity firm Inflexion completed an investment of London-based CP Electronics, a company providing programmable energy-saving control systems for lighting, heating, and ventilation. The PE, in partnership with CP Electronics, plans on really accelerating their growth, which they estimate is substantial. Yards, a company primarily engaged in real estate investment management and property management software solutions, made their second purchase of the year this month when they bought HVAC efficiency provider Enerlines, with to integrate their low-boast efficiency platform into their current real estate business. Example of an adjacent player getting into the smart cities game. Cities and smart grids, the integration of information technology with operational technology to enable creating efficiencies. PowerSense builds patented optical sensors as well as monitoring and controlling products that do just that. On the heels of a successful major project in Australia, PowerSense was just acquired last week by Swiss Landis & Gyr, which has been manufacturing electricity meters for over a century and which itself was acquired by Toshiba in 2011. In the smart grid space, Toshiba also acquired Concert earlier last year, also through Gyr, and then took a majority stake of CyberGrid, an Austrian developer of grid management with technology modeling at the virtual power plant level to match consumption with distributed generation. Beyond it itself, a driver of this deal was the ongoing collaboration with Landis & Gyr. Let's turn to more general applications, application tracking, and contextual intelligence. Last month, area startup QuickPay changed their name to Locomobi as they pivoted to address the smart cities market through mobilization and become the Uber of parking, beginning the acquisition of Canada's Nautical Technologies, which provides parking and other access control software as a service. Locomobi is backed by VCs including Andreessen Horowitz, who clearly see the opportunity to bring more smarts to cities, starting at the mobile level. Now, Euroscan offers temperature monitoring telematics for refrigerated transport of food and pharmaceuticals. While they were in the process of transitioning from legacy systems to M2M wireless solutions, they were a US-based Orbcomm, the M2M global asset monitoring and messaging service provider. Orbcomm with both vertical expertise and technology, but more significantly, a footprint in Europe for their other markets, such as heavy machinery and general transportation. Can't be smart without neural net connections, and in smart cities, that means high-speed internet, and for which is driving global consolidation, particularly in Europe. In the UK, Virgin Media acquired Small World Fiber for their high-speed network, and in Sweden, dominant network operator Telia Sonera acquired Zidius from MTG Broadcasting AB and Quadracom B for $58 million.
That activity report, very interesting deals, very representative of what's going on in the sector. Looking forward, we do expect more M&A activity. In one high-profile example, Alstom, the French and infrastructure giant, is in play. Alstom is a leader in the world of power generation, transmission, and rail infrastructure. They build the fastest train and the highest capacity automated metro in the world. Alstom talks with GE for $12 billion euro or $17 billion bid for its power arm. However, under strong political pressure, it has also opened discussions with Siemens. So the integrated technology market is driving significant M&A activity. So you're building a company capable of becoming an important thread in the smart city fabric, one to flourish in the middle ground where sustainability and carbon-friendly technologies create better living, competitive economic advantage. You'll want to hear what our panel speakers have to say. We're two industry luminaries with us today to discuss technologies, growth, and exit strategies in this marketplace. It's my pleasure to introduce first Eric of Navigant, a research director leading Navigant's research coverage of smart cities. In the role, he brings together his research experience in smart grids, smart networks, smart transport, and smart buildings. He has over years of experience as an analyst and consultant on the new technology trends, included in in-depth research in the areas of IT infrastructure, data analytics, knowledge management, sector IT, and clean and tech innovation. Eric, would you introduce the firm for us? Give us an idea and your role in the smart city world.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to do that. So Navigant Research is the dedicated research of Navigant, a specialized global expert services firm. Navigant Research itself is a market research and consulting team that provides analysis of global clean technology markets. Our research methodology combines supply-side industry analysis, end-user primary research and demand assessment, and deep examination of technology trends to provide a comprehensive view of the smart energy, smart utilities, smart transportation, and smart building sectors. I was research director for smart cities liaise closely with our dedicated research teams in those specific clean tech sectors, as well as leading our dedicated smart city research. As well as our global smart city market reports and supplier assessments, I've also been responsible for our recent work on smart parking systems and smart networks. I've also been heavily involved in our recent work on smart cities in Asia Pacific and smart city communication networks.
Thanks, Eric. And now I'd like to introduce Will Wynn. Will began his career selling engineering services to organizations in the southeastern U.S. In 1998, he joined GE Capital IT Solutions to develop and manage accounts, and in this role, he became an expert in building and IT systems. Will was recruited to Dimension Data, where he was formally recognized as the founding member of their leadership forum and key talent groups, and was invited into the exclusive President's Club all 6 years of his career at Dimension Data. In 2008, he struck out with two key business partners to found SmartCore to capitalize on the incredible opportunity in the connected real estate market. Responsible for driving many smart building implementations from an array of vertical markets such as commercial real estate, healthcare, hospitality, finance, manufacturing, higher ed, through 12 schools, municipals, and federal markets. Smart also recognized by Cisco Systems at the 2011 Partner Summit for 3 prestigious awards in the connected real estate segments. What else about SmartCore, please?
Thanks, Jeff. So as Jeff was explaining there, we're a master systems integrator. We're a boutique firm that specializes in the demand side of the smart building community. We decided once we built our IP and IT experience to move that out of the IT closets and move that into the built-in, to-be-built environment. So we go to market to new construction and existing buildings, and we purposely go to market to build all of these specialty low-voltage systems from the ground floor up to be intelligent, smart, connected, data-driven, open, etc. And we do bits and pieces of that along the way for the existing built environment, and we cross the vertical markets horizontally and work with municipalities, K through 12, higher education, the commercial real estate space, industrial, manufacturing, and really play on all of those vertical markets minus the residential space. So we've been going now for the last 5.5 years, and our primary business is domestically in the United States. However, we have done a few projects internationally.
Thanks, Will. First question is for Eric. Eric, I read recently where you said that smart city models are at a nascent stage, and smart cities will take many different forms in different parts of the world. Pilot projects are underway that could provide templates for the design of new urban centers in Asia and the Middle East, as well as frameworks for low-lying infrastructure to make older cities smarter in North America and in Europe. My question is, would you share some insight into the nascence of the marketplace and the global disparity in the adoption of smart city technologies?
Happy to, Jeff. Excuse me. There's two ways to look at that in terms of giving that nascent aspect. One, I think if you look at it in this sort of time series, the way the market has been promoted, initially I think we saw really shaped by a number of key suppliers and thought leaders. You mentioned a few in your presentation, people like Siemens and Schneider. I think I would add, certainly IBM and Cisco played a key role, and really they were thinking about the role of technology addressing a whole range of urbanization issues, particularly mass urbanization in Asia. That raised the profile of the whole topic, but really strong momentum has come, I think, in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years or so. Cities around the world have picked up that agenda and seen it very relevant to the issues they're struggling with in Asia, but also Latin America, Europe, and North America. I think that's partly sort of complicated the thing even more because each city is bringing a unique focus to these issues, and we're now in a stage, I think, of mapping out what the key areas of intervention are and the key areas for opportunity in terms of delivering technological solutions to cities. That's also been affected by the change of geographical focus. The initial interest, as I said, was largely about what was happening in Asia and the need to address large-scale urbanization, and that tended to focus on sort of new city developments in places like Songdo and Masdar in Abu Dhabi. Then picked up in a range, particularly in Europe and to some extent Latin America, where it was retaken up because it addressed issues around the sustainability of cities, but also focusing on the importance of cities as centers of economic regeneration. So it's been a very active topic, and it's a growing number of European cities over the last years or more. And cities like Amsterdam and Barcelona have become real figurehead locations for smart city concepts. And then in the last 12 months, we've really seen North American cities getting on board. And North American cities obviously have been big investors in technology in many ways, but I don't think have really bought into that broader narrative around smart cities until the last year. And that's brought with it a whole range of new vendors who are also now addressing this space. So it is a complex market where we're really trying to still work out where the biggest bang for the buck, if you like, for cities will be in terms of their technology investment, and how it ties together existing investments they're already making in areas like smart grid, smart water, and transportation.
Thank you. Will, maybe count on you for a little bit more of a drill down into what you're seeing in North America and your particular market segment within Smart City. What are some drivers and technologies at the forefront of adoption as you see it from your vantage point?
Yeah, Eric hit a lot of the high points when he focused back on North America. But if I'd answer that question, Jeff, let me take 3 steps back. From North America, from a macro level, it's a very industrialized nation, obviously. So there's a lot of built environment. Such there's a massive ecosystem of providing services to those existing buildings, cities, etc. You had the Great Recession, which impacted the development and the evangelization of these types of technologies. Put those two things together, and it makes the adoption rate slower here, and the curve, going up, the technology adoption cycle has been slower. I would say that today, the early adopter cycle, and what I mean by that is over the last 6 months, the economy has stabilized, a lot more financing coming into the development community. And as such, these counties, states, and the country from a federal perspective are starting to look into do more intelligent things with their systems. And that goes from government itself to the cities themselves and back to the buildings on the private side. So there's a lot of activity here, but it's just been burgeoning over the last 6 to 10 months. I would say that where people have been, taking a bite of the apple has been on the energy management side of things, and comes from either utilities put their supply in a more intelligent way with sensors and energy management systems to buildings themselves, adapting to energy management in the form of mechanical HVAC controls and automation, and electricity controls and automation. So those types of technologies are fairly simple. They're not very expensive, and the return on the investment is pretty quick. So that's where most of these people have been coming from. And as Eric was suggesting, there are larger Tier 1 and some smaller Tier 2 cities that are jumping into things like the Better Buildings Challenge that has been promoted by President Obama. There are other cities that have made public and private partnerships in conjunction with their utilities and the members. Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where I live, is one of those. And so as that momentum continues to build, and as long as there aren't any other critical crises going on domestically speaking, I think that'll move into the building, the residential, the utilities, and at least can be done from an intelligent perspective on a built environment versus the examples that Eric was using, like Songdo, where they're building basically ICT infrastructure from the ground floor up.
Well, ask you this next question as well, if you would carry on. One of the challenges here is the disparity in adoption between retrofits and greenfield projects. As you look forward at your business and your business growth, where do you see the growth coming from? In retrofits, in the built-out infrastructure, or in greenfield projects, or is it fairly evenly distributed?
That's a great question, Jeff. So if I may, I want to answer that question by explaining to you, when we built the organization of SmartCore and the business plan and the pro forma, our plan was to evangelize to early adopters and to sell into the new construction unbuilt community. Domestically speaking, when the Great Recession sunk in, the commercial real estate world imploded, so there wasn't a whole lot of development at all going on from the new construction side of things. Fast forward 5.5 years, business is actually split 50-50. So 50% of our business comes in the form of new construction, where we're working with city stakeholders and developers, purpose building all of these systems from the ground floor up. And the other 50% comes from the retrofit market in the form of energy management, digital media, physical security, and core network communications. Now, I say that to mention two variables that underlie those two economic components. New construction projects for us are 12 to 60 month cycles. So they're seeds that we basically harvest in the ground and water, and they don't come out of the ground for a long period, and it's something in the future. The rent business are very short sales cycles, but the deal value size for us are smaller. So long and short of it is that we have 50% growth. I think the growth for the future will be high in the new construction because there's a lot more human activity going on there. But the current volume that we have today is in the retrofit market, just because there's just more care and feeding that needs to happen with existing buildings where, hypothetically speaking, they don't have any automation or controls with some of their mechanical and electrical systems, or they just need to upfit some of their existing systems and do that in a more intelligent way.
Thank you. Eric, care to tackle the same question for us?
Yeah, I can see the picture that Will paints, and that makes sense, I think, in the building sector, particularly in North America. I think the only thing I would do is perhaps just add the little nuance to that picture, that I'd make a distinction. Often when people talk about greenfield in terms of smart cities, they're talking about very large-scale community developments or even completely new cities in Asia or Africa or the developing areas. Clearly, in Europe and North America, from a C standpoint, virtually all of the projects are retrofit in the sense of we are talking about existing communities and cities, their challenge to adapt and develop, for new challenges ahead. So I think there's an interesting also sort of medium sort of category of brownfield development, which is very interesting, and I'm sure some of the things that we're talking about that's happening in many of our larger cities, where we're seeing regeneration of areas, say dockland areas or former industrial areas, and bringing in smart city concepts, into a sort of fresh perspective for those developments. But really in North America and Europe, from city leaders' point of view, it is about how do they take their existing cities and adapt them to these new challenges.
Next one is to you, and I'm going to ask about source of technology innovation. Ask you both to answer it, and then let's talk about in the source of investment, the vendor community. Where do you see the significant technology innovation coming from? Coming from the traditional infrastructure players, new strategics that are being attracted to the marketplace, or from the entrepreneurial community that may or may not be venture-backed?
Well, as you probably guess, all of the above to some extent. There is great disparity amongst each of those categories about how quickly people have seized on the opportunity presented by smart cities. We've certainly seen some of the key infrastructure players being very active in this space, and I'd pick up someone like Schneider or Siemens, who've been thought leaders, as well as bringing new solutions to the market. I mentioned before, IBM and Cisco from the IT and telecoms background, and then also, we've seen people like Tiber and Hitachi moving out not just from their local markets, but being global players in terms of dimensions of smart cities. So we're in innovation from larger players. And I think particularly interesting is innovation happening between the gaps. One of the most interesting things in smart cities, I think, is that overlap between the classics of IT, and you mentioned software background players and the infrastructure players that are really changing the fabric of the city. We've also seen property developers also bringing new perspectives on this market. And then, of course, you've got a very broad ecosystem of smaller startups coming up, particularly in the areas of sensor networks, analytics, visualization, and so forth. Some addressing fairly broad requirements in smart cities, but a very interesting group, I think, who are trying to tackle emergent applications in the smart city area, like street lighting, smart parking systems. And I think those specific application areas are interesting bellwethers about how much the market is actually getting real traction at scale in cities. Innovation is very broad, but it's also uneven within each of the existing categories, and we're seeing sort of different speed of innovation, if you like, within each of those groups. Opportunity for differentiation.
Do you offer perspective?
Yeah, so Eric nailed it again there. There's a lot of moving parts here, and going back to the macroeconomic conditions or adoption conditions, there's a lot yet to be worked out. But what we're seeing is a minimum 3 moving parts as it relates to where this is going to go. One is their ecosystem of providers that are incumbents on the large building systems integration side that manage these buildings or provide services to these buildings in some form or fashion, and domestically, as is, I believe, internationally. So the majority of incumbency there are from organizations like Siemens, Johnson Controls, UTC, Honeywell. So they got a handle on how those heavy systems are being managed today, and you, like Tyler was speaking to before, there's a lot of activity going on with these larger firms and moving up that quadrant to the top, right block. Secondarily, there's a lot of new startup type organizations that are doing some very creative things in the form of software-based analytics, controls, just building systems in a different way with a more ICT, IP open type of flair. My background comes from that space. That's very interesting to me as you work your way up the networking OSI stack for you guys that are on the call. So when you take your intelligence and you move that up from the physical layer into a software layer and you start to trade that information, that's just simply a better way of doing things. The thing that I would mention there is that there's an ecosystem of developers, construction management, commercial real estate firms, and most of everybody on the call has probably heard of Jones & LaSalle and their relationship with Pacific Control. So I believe that those companies that are not building owners or city managers may look to those types of organizations for performance guarantees or some type of energy services contract to take responsibility for managing the energy, maybe do that in the form of an services contract or performance guarantee where they can guarantee savings over a certain period of time. And once those contracts get stabilized and those technologies get stabilized in these cities and states, governments can work through the politics of getting those contracts signed. Then the momentum will really be on, and take the adoption rate will go up to the proverbial roller coaster curve. So I think that we're too far away from that. It's just a little bit uncertain of who's going to be the disruptor in that marketplace, if of those, and it may be somebody that new, considering you work your way towards further adoption of technology, then you also move away from on-premise gear and you move into the, what these technical folks call cloud and type-based services. So there's a lot to be fleshed out, and I think that'll happen over the next 3 to 5 years.
I see we have time for just a few more questions. So let me ask this one, and I'll shorten it up from what I originally asked. We've talked about investment by the major infrastructure players. We've seen a bit of the activity, representative activity from the venture community. This profile really reflected acquisitions by strategics. The equities seem to be missing from the discussion today. Market just too early for a lot of private equity activity, or is it active our sampling here? Eric first.
I think, in short, you're right. I think it is too early. I think also you have to differentiate the difference of layers, if you like, within this market. In some parts of, say, the energy space or water, then they're much more mature, and we've seen some consolidation, and we've seen a bigger role for private equity. When we move over to what you might call the emergent smart city market and the new innovations and new solutions in that space, then I think it has been much more from the VC community or strategic investments from players. So I think we are seeing a mixed economy, if you like, depending on which part of that market you're seeing. And I certainly think we're also seeing a shift into investment that previously would have gone into more pure play energy space, going to support who can address those broader smart city requirements that we've been talking about.
Direct a different question to you, this one from the audience. The question is, what role, if any, do you see AI, artificial intelligence, playing in this emerging market?
I believe that question is probably coming from an IoE, Internet of Everything, or M2M, machine-to-machine type of station. So the fact of the matter is, as much like it is with any type of technology, is that electronics can be pervasive and change the way that we typically operate buildings and communities. And so big data, IoE, M2M, all of these types of terms reek of pulling human intervention out of this. However, while you can paint a rosy picture with that or a cloud doom, there's a lot of manipulation that still requires care and feeding from a human level. And so there have to be so many things worked out for that to be done where the human factor would be completely unwound. And the primary point around that is cybersecurity. So you touched upon that, but it's a critical component as it relates to smart cities and big data and all of these marketing terms that we put around open systems and use of information. And so that has a lot to be fleshed out, and there's a lot of fodder around that, justifiably so, over the past years with the industrial internet and companies like Honeywell/3M and their Niagara framework, and what happened with it and the supply chain. So the point of that is that before we get to that place, there's going to have to be regulation, there's going to have to be a prevent secure architecture for access and/or from electronic management without any human intervention before that takes place. So I hope that's where that question was going, and I hope I was able to answer it.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to add, I think I've been doing this job for 20 years, and people have been looking for the role of AI, but I think there are some significant opportunities and things starting to happen as cities start to understand the opportunities around the data collections that are now available to them. So I'm seeing an interest in things like predictive analytics for traffic management, the public safety areas, and also some of the energy management spaces that Will talked about. So there's some very interesting opportunities around the use of analytics to support decision making in the city. I think that's going to be a very interesting area over the next couple of years.
Last question to you. We've just got a few more minutes left, and I appreciate your bringing cybersecurity into the conversation because it is critical here. We have had a chance to talk about it just yet. But this one more for the entrepreneur among our listening audience. Any observations that you can share with regard to new business models that you see potentially working well in the broader smart city marketplace or not working well? And think about the role of public-private partnerships in the ecosystem as you answer the question. And Will, I'll ask you to go first, and then Eric will wrap up with you.
So the question was around entrepreneurial activity and growth in this sector?
New models. Do you see this marketplace bringing new business models or not adopting traditional business models for technology vendors?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make apologies for that. Yeah, I think that there's a huge opportunity on the entrepreneurial side. And again, just because we're at a growth stage within this marketplace, the ones that would come to my mind out of the top of my head would be around software, big data, analytics, and intelligence. So Eric touched upon this. I had mentioned it a little bit earlier as well. But the ability to do something more with the information that's already within these buildings, really the $1 million dilemma. And so today, unfortunately, because of siloed and proprietary systems, you have access to all of the data empirically to do anything with. So that's one of the corners by which we built SmartCore, was to be able to do that for the unbuilt and try to get that from the built environment. But back to the predictive and advanced intelligence that you can formulate through building formulas and demand response and fault detection and diagnostics, and these terms that get used for taking data and doing much more with it. That's where the opportunity is. So if you gain that data and provide extreme value on making proactive changes, or an HVAC system goes down for a building, for example, that's and as you can scale that over an enterprise, that's huge for a city or a state. If you go back to your utility and not pay or not demand peak rate energy, that a huge value to that. So for the companies that can put together a business model to set that back to the utilities and or back to federal government or the state municipalities, I think those are the ones that will have an immediate impact and will have growth opportunities.
To you, final comments.
Yeah, I would say new business models are not optional; they're essential if we're going to realize this vision of smart cities. Because anyone who's familiar with traditional city financing knows that they're just not in a situation to really drive forward investments in technology at the level we're talking about. So public partnerships of many different forms are going to be evolving, both traditional models for that and new ones, including new types of partnership between players, between service providers within the city and infrastructure and IT players, as well as with the city and with finance organizations. That's going to be key. Various forms of performance contracting, again, traditional energy performance contracting, but variations around different services. Will talked about the role of data and the opportunity to do new things with data and to monetize that, which is going to be very interesting, though I'm not sure anyone's quite sure that will happen. The cloud is essential as well because it removes the CapEx requirements on cities and opens up the opportunity for innovation. And I think there's a very important role for new business models to finance platforms for multiple applications within the city, so we can go beyond traditional silos, find a way of supporting street lighting, smart parking, public safety, air quality monitoring systems off the same basic infrastructure investments in terms of networks and communications, for example. So I think innovation in finance and business models is important as technological innovation if we're going to realize this opportunity.
Well, Eric Woods of Navigant, Will Wynn of SmartCore, I want to thank you for insights and your participation today. And WFS audience, I want to thank you for joining us as well. This concludes our market spotlight on smart cities. Thank you all.